Hi everyone, this is the 135th video of the ACT Math Practice Problem series, and here we have an interesting problem from the concept of periodic function. As I always recommend, before seeing the solution you can pause the video and give it a try yourself, and after that of course you want to match with my solution. So let's get started. Here the question says, what is the amplitude of the function f of x equals 2/3 times sine of 7 times x plus pi over 4. So we have been provided a function, it's a periodic function obviously, and we have to find out the amplitude of this function. We know the general form of a periodic function, which is a sine function, is kind of like this. Now here a, b, c and d, they actually indicate different things. So we have to understand what is a. Well, a kind of indicates the amplitude. That is why we in fact use the lowercase a, because a is the first letter of the word amplitude anyways. So a indicates the amplitude, and in fact, let me make a quick note here. Here the amplitude of this function would be the absolute value of a. It indicates that how far the function graph could go from the equilibrium line. Sometimes you could be given a positive coefficient for the sine ratio, sometimes you could be given a negative coefficient for the sine ratio. So depending on whatever is the coefficient, we have to use the absolute value of that coefficient. Like in our example, in this particular question, we have been given a positive coefficient for the sine ratio, which is positive 2/3. However, it could have been given a negative value also. So we have to be careful. We have to take the absolute value of the coefficient of the sine ratio. And also let's make a quick note about b. When calculating the period of this function, that is where b comes into play. Now what would be the period of this function? The period of this function would be 2 pi over b. And what does c indicate? Well, c actually indicates the horizontal shift or horizontal translation. So we can say horizontal translation would be equal to negative of c, and this negative sign is of course with respect to the x-axis and the origin. And then what about d? Well, d actually indicates the distance of the equilibrium line from the x-axis. In fact, the equation of the equilibrium line is y equals d. That's the equation of the equilibrium line. That means the equilibrium line will be either above the x-axis or below the x-axis or coincident with the x-axis depending on the value of d. Now with this note, can we now look at our example and find out what is the amplitude of the given function here? Well, you can clearly see that the coefficient of our given function here, the sine function, the coefficient here is positive 2/3. So when you have to say amplitude of this function, obviously we have to take the absolute value, but in this case it's a positive value anyway, so the absolute function is not going to make any difference. So here we can clearly see that the amplitude of this function is actually positive 2/3. And if you look at our answer options, we have positive 2/3 under option A. So option A would be the correct option. I hope everything made sense. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.